What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first ever episode, the pilot, if you will, of the 7 Figures or Bust podcast. I'm your host, Christian Brindle. If you're not familiar with my work, I'll briefly tell you a little bit about myself, who I am, what my company does, and what our goal is for this platform and this show. My name is Christian Brindle, as I mentioned. I am an insurance agency owner. I have done a tremendous amount in the Medicare insurance, senior insurance space. I've been a top producer for 6 to 7 different insurance companies, most of which multiple times over. I've published multiple books, some for consumers to explain how Medicare works a little bit better, others to help agents grow their business and be better producers overall and make more money while helping a lot of people while doing it. I host a conference that's going into year 2 next year called the Six Figure Medicare Agent Summit. And I run the 7 Figure Medicare Agent Facebook group with about 4,500 agents. It's probably one of the 3 largest Medicare communities on Facebook. Now, why am I telling you all this? Well, first thing I wanted to do to kind of start off this show is if you're new to our content, if you've never actually absorbed or actually seen any of our content previously, I wanted to make sure that I established a little bit of my accomplishments to that, so that way you know that there's credibility in what I'm going to be teaching on this platform. The podcast 7 Figures or Bust kind of came about because, in my opinion, I think in the new economy, in the new world, the way things are going right now with the increased price of inflation, the increased cost of everything, pricing soaring, and really instability and also uncertainty when it comes to our economy in the United States of America, it's more pressing than ever that you need to understand that in order to really be financially free, you need to be able to push into the 7-figure bracket. 6 figures isn't enough anymore. And so this podcast, 7 Figures or Bust, is to help you know what you need to do, take the necessary steps to push your business forward into that 7-figure bracket. And I'm going to help you do it, okay? I'm really, really excited about this show. It's something that's going to be probably my most worked on project going into 2023. We're actually just days away from Christmas time. It's about the 22nd of December, 2022 as I record this. And I thought, what a better time to put out our first ever episode, our pilot, if you will, than a few days before Christmas, right, as we're approaching the new year. People always ask me, and I wanted to kind of start off today's show with this. People routinely kind of ask me, what do I need to do to have a better year next year? I don't know if this potentially sounds like you, but it's certainly described me in the past over the years, and a ton of agents that I actually counsel and mentor and work with throughout the industry. And that is that and I think this just goes for people in general as well. I don't think it's necessarily just insurance agents or Medicare agents or anything like that. I think it goes for people as a whole. But I think it's pretty common for people to have really hefty, lofty, large goals for the new year, right? When January 1 comes around, everything's going to change, right? I'm going to be going to the gym every single day. I'm going to be eating better every single day. I'm going to be working harder every single day. I'm going to write 10 times the business that I wrote in this previous year. And then the new year comes, and it's kind of more of the same. You still don't go to the gym as much as you want. Maybe you eat a little too much crap than you'd prefer. Maybe you still are writing the exact same amount of business as you did before. Why? Why is it? Why is there a lack of change when there's so heavily a desire for change? Well, to me, it's rather simple. There's no strategy to cause change to take effect, right, in your life, in your business, in your personal life, in your family life. There's no strategy. There's no plan. If you keep doing the same things that you were doing in 2022, you're going to have the exact same results that you had in 2022, and probably 2021, and probably 2020, and probably 2019, and probably 2018, and on and on and on. If you're not willing to make changes, look at things from a different point of view, if you're not willing to make a different strategy than what you've had before, then you're going to continue to get the same results no matter how high your goals are. People always say in the personal development, entrepreneurship space that got to write down your goals, right? It's true. Writing down your goals is a very valuable and, in my opinion, necessary thing to accomplish big things, including creating a 7-figure income and a 7-figure business, okay? But if you don't put down a step-by-step strategy of how you're going to get there and put things down to change behaviors and processes and disciplines that you were doing before that didn't get you where you want to go. If you don't have a roadmap to get you there, you're just going to continue going in circles like you always have. It's almost like, and I've used this analogy before, you're trying to get to Canada, but you don't use a map, you don't have a GPS, you don't have anything, you're just randomly driving. There's a very good chance that you'll end up in Florida, you might end up in Mexico, you might end up in California, but there's a very good chance you won't end up in Canada unless you just get lucky and you're driving in the right direction. You need a roadmap, you need a plan. And going into 2023, I hope that you guys take the time at the end of the year to not only map out your goals, not only make New Year's resolutions, which to me are absolutely ridiculous because you should be trying to improve yourself all year round, not just at the beginning of the year. People lack discipline. That's why New Year's resolutions don't work. Anything worth doing is worth doing all the time. Anything worth doing is worth doing all year round. And so when people kind of isolate their ambitions to only make improvements in their life in January, one time a year, the discipline isn't there. The discipline is like a muscle that you use over and over again. You work it out, and the stronger it gets and the easier it gets. It's just like working out at the gym, right? If I'm doing curls at the gym, I'm going to have a much easier time doing more curls if I'm doing them all year long than if I'm just trying to do them once, 1 week out of the year. Same goes for your discipline. So if your discipline is utilized and put into motion all year round, New Year's resolutions won't be so hard to keep. So many people lack the ability to kind of fulfill and follow through on their New Year's resolutions because they don't have any discipline. I've said this before, motivation and inspiration are okay, but they pale in comparison to discipline and purpose. Because those are the things that don't go away as easily, right? Motivation is more like a shower, right? You take a shower, you're clean, but tomorrow you won't be if you don't take another shower. Motivation wears off so fast. Discipline continues. Discipline is something that's a habit, right? It's not as sexy as motivation, but it's a habit. It's something you develop over time. These are the things you need to do to have a better 2023 than you did in 2022 if you feel like you didn't reach your full potential this year. This is something I'm always looking at for myself. I'm not necessarily saying that I'm perfect in any regard, but what I am trying to say is I'm probably more disciplined than 99% of people out there, and I'm always figuring out ways I can improve on myself. But I'm doing this all year round. I'm not just doing it for New Year's resolutions. I have New Year's resolutions, but it's things that I would have done in the middle of the year if it's something that I wanted to do. I'm not waiting to the end of the year to make positive changes in my business and in my life. Just a little food for thought and something to think about to kick off this pilot episode of the 7 Figures or Bust podcast. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about probably a question I'll get a lot, and that's why do I need to make 7 figures? Why can't I make 200 a year? Why can't I make 300, 400, 500 a year? Why does it have to be 7 figures? Well, I think it's important to kind of digest and have a conversation about this new economy that we're in right now. We all know that the inflation numbers have been higher in the last several years than they've ever been, probably in most of our lifetimes. If not throughout your lifetime, if maybe you're a little bit older than I am, then perhaps since you were a child. It's unmatched with the exception of when you were a child. It's been that long, right? So let's just talk about some facts here for a second. At the time of this recording in 2022, prices have increased 7.1%. Inflation is at an all-time high since 40 years ago, right? So we're at the highest inflation rate year in, year out than we've had in over 40 years. I'm 30 years old, so that eclipses my lifetime. I've never seen inflation like this in my lifetime, and a lot of you probably haven't either. If you're watching this, maybe you're 45, 50, you probably don't remember it well enough. You were so young at that point in time. And so I think as prices continue to increase, things cost more. Your money's not stretching out as far. You keep $10,000 in the bank, 6 months from now, it probably will only be worth $8,000. Not because you lost $2,000, but because the inflation eats away at what your money is worth, what it can buy. It's almost like by keeping it in the bank and not doing anything with it and not growing, that you're losing money. You're losing money and there's nothing that you can do about it. Inflation is something that is very, very complicated. A lot of people really can't understand what it is, but really what it means is your dollar is going down in value. So your money doesn't stretch as far as it did before. You ever heard grandparents say in the past that when I was your age, I could get a loaf of bread for a nickel, right? Or a quarter, or whatever the dollar amount might be. Nowadays, a loaf of bread is whatever it is, right? That's because of inflation. And there's a whole show that we could do about inflation. If you guys would actually like to see an entire show breaking down the concept of inflation, where it started, what it comes from, how the United States took us off the gold standard several years back, and that kind of really amplified inflation to a very large degree because our money isn't backed by anything. If you'd like a whole entire podcast going over that, let me know in the comment section because I'm happy to do it if that's an interest that you guys have. But for the purposes of this episode, we need to have the conversation that says, this is where we are. This is something that we can all agree on, I'm sure. This is where we are. So how do you combat it? Well, there's nothing you can do to stop inflation from happening, but you need to kind of understand and kind of assess the problem if you're going to come up with a solution. I know for myself, I'll even kind of use myself as an example. Several days ago, I took the day off of work, which is very unusual for me because I'm a workaholic. Anybody that knows me, I work hard. If you want to be a winner, you got to work, okay? But I took a day off. And I went Christmas shopping with my wife. Just the two of us. My daughter was in school. We thought it would be kind of fun. You know, I'm kind of strange. I like things like that. I went Christmas shopping, right? I went into Costco. Now, anybody that has a Costco membership, you know, you go in for Costco, you go into Costco and you go in for one or two things, you walk out spending $250. That's exactly what happens. Walked out, the bill was a little bit over $250. Walked out with a bunch of stuff. Went to Walmart because there were some things we couldn't find at Costco. Walked out with maybe $200 to $300 worth of stuff as well. Probably spent $500 to $600 within a few hours just Christmas shopping, getting food for a Christmas dinner that we're hosting a few days later. And how would a normal person be able to afford that? If someone's making $3,000 to $4,000, maybe even $5,000 a month, right? Maybe they're in the middle class. Maybe they're making a good $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year. You spend $600 at once. It's almost like you can't breathe. It's almost like I reached into your lungs and I stole the oxygen out from your chest if you're in that income bracket. And I know that feeling. I'm not saying it to disparage anybody. I know because I've been there. Right, in the early age stages of my career, when I wasn't really kind of acting up to my full potential, right? I was doing well, but I could have done so much better if I was thinking bigger, if I was using the brain between my ears. You know, if I was using it a little bit more effectively, I would have maybe been thinking bigger. I wasn't thinking big enough. I didn't understand kind of what was necessary. If I spent $500, $600 at a time at that point in time, it was like I couldn't breathe, you know, and that is the reality of today. You can't go into the grocery store these days even to get one or two things and walk out without paying $100. How can regular people afford this? The answer is they can't, as well as that they should. And so to me, it really comes down to you need to understand that going into next year, you need to set a target for yourself and say, okay, if I want to be financially free, if I really want to be financially free, the costs of everything is going to continue to increase. 6 figures isn't enough anymore. This is what I need you to wrap your head around in your business. 6 figures is not enough anymore. You need to hit that 7-figure mark. You need to convince yourself that it's what you absolutely have to do, and you have to be willing to make the sacrifices and put in the work to be able to do it. I assume that is you if you're watching this episode, if you're watching this show. 7 figures or bust, baby. But that's why it's needed, right? I mean, according to Investopedia, I just was reading an article the other day about Investopedia. If you're making between $43,000 and $133,000, I think those were the numbers they gave, $43,000, $133,000, you're in the middle class. It used to be if you made a 6-figure income that you were at least in the upper middle class, you're doing very well, and it just doesn't stretch as far as it used to. Embrace this concept with me and aim higher, push higher, make the commitment and understand that you need to reach 7 figures if you want to be financially free. It is not possible to make $300,000 a year and really be financially free anymore. Not in this economy, not in this day and age. You got to hit 7 figures. 7 figures or bust, okay? I wanted to talk about some things that are going on in the world that I feel like are kind of interesting right now that I believe that you and I can both learn from, right? Just a couple of things. The first thing I want to talk about is TikTok. So TikTok, right? Everybody knows TikTok. It's a very, very popular social media app. It's a social media app that has caused a lot of controversy. It's something that comes from China, and it's been heavily, heavily debated whether we should ban this app in our country or not. Now, why does this matter for you? Well, if the app gets banned, right, if they ban the TikTok app, in my opinion, what this means is people that have built an audience onto TikTok, they absolutely just get erased. You saw it a couple years ago with an app called Vine. There were people that became Vine stars, right? Vine was this little app where you could have, I think it was 6-second videos. That was it. It was incredibly short, but it was addictive, right? People don't have very long attention spans. It's kind of a similar reason why TikTok has been so successful. It's these short videos. People can just watch them in bunches, move one to the other super quickly. But the TikTok algorithm, like a lot of new social medias, we saw it with Instagram, we saw it with Snapchat. Once upon a time, we saw it with a bunch of different new platforms. When the new platform comes out, the algorithm is still developing, and it's so much easier to get exposure compared to the way it used to be, right? Compared to some of these larger platforms, I should say. And so, it's an opportunity to get a really large following. You could be nobody, and all of a sudden you could have 100,000 followers, 1 million followers potentially, right? But what is a mistake that a lot of people do with these new platforms? They go all in on this platform, when what they should be doing is pushing their audience to diversify into platforms are going to be here later. Instagram is going to be here tomorrow. YouTube is going to be here tomorrow. Facebook is going to be here tomorrow. Facebook groups, Facebook fan pages, things like that. You should be still creating and taking advantage of these platforms as far as I'm concerned, but you should be pushing your audience into some of these other platforms and diversify. So that way, if there's a ban on TikTok tomorrow, right? Now, whether they should ban TikTok or not, I'm not here to kind of give that kind of opinion. I really am indifferent to it, to be honest with you. The reason why they feel like they should ban it is because there's a lot of evidence that has started to come out, and speculation that the TikTok app is constantly studying you, number one. It's constantly gathering information that they believe that the Chinese might be able to use against us if we ever went to war with them. That's very problematic, if that's true. The other thing is, if you look at kind of what TikTok shows, Patrick Bet-David did a great video on Valuetainment about this. If you haven't watched that video, I highly suggest it. But he mentioned that there's this case study that for TikTok users in China, it's showing them productive videos. The algorithm is always pushing productive videos. It's rewarding creativity. It's awarding innovation. It's awarding, entrepreneurship, smarts, things like that, to kind of continue to, have the society and the culture be all about winning, achievement, that kind of thing. Whereas in the United States, it's rewarding stupidity, stupid dances, anything that they can do to kind of dumb down the public, the American public, from the inside out. And that's scary as hell to me. So for me, I'm not really using TikTok for that reason. But if you are and you have a big audience for it, I would very much expect that at some point the app is probably going to get banned in the United States. I would be pushing your followers off of that app onto an app that is going to be there, right? I mean, use it as long as you can. Run it into the ground until it does get banned. Maybe it won't. Maybe I'm wrong. And then you still have your audience there. But you should never be too invested into one platform. There's several people I know in the insurance space that have built their audience on one platform. If that platform goes down, they're done. They're dead meat. Never want to be that person. That's kind of what I took about, that story that's been circulating lately about the possibility of TikTok being banned. It's a conversation that's been had before. It's a conversation that was being had during the Trump administration. They weren't able to get it banned, although they tried. Now it's starting to have that conversations once again. And sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. Let me shift gears over to this FTX Sam Bankman-Fried story. If you're not familiar with this story, I'll kind of bring you up to speed a little bit. FTX was an international cryptocurrency trading platform. It was a place that you could store your cryptocurrency. It was a place you could trade cryptocurrency. And it was looked at as probably one of the safer investments that you could make in the cryptocurrency world. Not really investments necessarily, but it's a place that you could trust to put your money. And it was probably looked at as very safe in a very speculative industry, which is cryptocurrency. Within the past several months, it's actually come to light that the platform was bankrupt, insolvent, and not able to meet the debts of probably about $8 billion of investor money. Looks like it was lost. It's kind of been speculative in terms of what actually happened, but it's looking more and more like there was potential embezzling going on, fraud, commingling of funds with another company called Alameda Research, which was, I guess, being ran by the founder and the owner's girlfriend at the time. It's just a big mess all around, right? Now, in the days leading up to actually me recording this podcast, Sam Bankman-Fried was actually arrested. Okay, he was arrested and he's going to face trial. Looks like he has a very good chance of facing life in prison. As in my opinion, he should, if you screwed investors out of billions of dollars. And it looks like a lot of people that invested into FTX are not going to be able to get their money back. That's just looking like more of a reality. I mean, there were people I knew that would be like, oh, it's a guaranteed 10, 11% return on your investment. I wonder how's that working out for you? To me, if you're running a business, the best investment you can make is in your business. I probably invest 60% of my investment money back into my business. I buy some stocks, I buy some REITs, I buy things that I believe have a very low chance of actually losing me money, index funds, things like that. But the majority of where I invest my money, and it was actually 100% for years up until the last year or two, but the best place to invest your money is in your business, right? The best investment you can make is in you, in yourself. And you can predict what your level of return of investment is going to be. You invest into your business, you invest in people, you invest in marketing, you invest in systems, you invest in processes. And this is going to probably bode a higher return on investment than any other investment you can make. Opposed to putting your money into an organization like an FTX that you really don't know what's going on. 6 months ago, people thought it was such a well-ran company and it was so safe and it was a great and smart place to put your money. And we all know that that's not the truth anymore. So to me, if you are making 50 grand a year, if you're making 100 grand a year, if you're making even 400 or 500 grand a year, you should be investing everything that you're spending back into your business, back into your company. If you're an agency owner, if you're an entrepreneur, if you work for an agency and it's not your own book of business, then maybe I'd probably buy stocks, rental properties, index funds, things like that. That's my own investment advice, right? I'm not a licensed investment advisor, financial planner, or anything like that. Anything I talk about is sheer entertainment purposes only, but that's what I would do if I was you, right? I would be going all into your business. And some might even argue that you should never, ever invest into anything that's not your business. And I think that's probably a pretty wise mentality going into 2023. Invest into what you have control over, right? You have control over what happens in your own business. You don't have control into another company that you buy shares in, and you're just kind of knowing what you know, but you're not there on a day-to-day basis. You can never know what's really going on there until maybe it's too late. Case in point, FTX. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this first episode, this pilot episode of the 7 Figures or Bust podcast. I'm super excited to be bringing you high-level content, conversation, discussions about what's going on in the world, but also just tips about how to help grow your business from a perspective of to get you to 7 figures, right? I think to get to 7 figures, you have to think differently than someone that's making 5 figures or 6 figures, right? The mindset, the mentality is completely different. And if you're at 7 figures and you want to get to 8 figures, that mindset needs to change as well. It's almost like an evolutionary chain of your ability to think and process situations from the right mentality of what you need to get to, right? It's all about between the ears. Everybody has the same 24 hours in a day. Everybody has the same obstacles. Everybody has the same problems in their life. Maybe someone has a little bit more problems than somebody else, but we all have challenges. We all have tragedy. We all have obstacles. We all have difficulty. And we all have the same 24 hours in a day. It's all about between the ears that's going to make the difference between getting you to point A to point B, from point B to point C, and so on and so forth. Anyway, guys, I hope you guys have a wonderful Christmas with your families. And wish you nothing but love, success, and blessings as we go into the new year. Thanks for watching this first episode. If you liked it, show us some love. Drop a 5-star review on any platform that lets you do it, like Apple Podcasts, iTunes, any of the podcast platforms. Subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Like this video if you're watching on YouTube. Comment what you'd like to see in future episodes. And until next time, we'll see you. Here's to your success, and here's to you breaking 7 figures.